I was gonna say something because I had time to do that because no one was around. If there's people around, I can't talk because I don't have that kind of clout. Um, I had my, you know, other shit logged into the swap thing here, and it's neat, kind of rebuilding my slot feed. Um, it's mostly kind of like brain rot education stuff, edutainment, and brain rot entertainment, uh, which seems to it's sort of like that's just about being entertained by doing something miserable. Um, the premise of all the like Asian comic book hero narratives is the character starts out the most despisable, uh, failure kind of loser. Their their perspective on life is that it would be better if they got hit by a truck and got to live in a, like a Dragon Quest video game from the 1990s rather than continuing their own existence. And that's pretty miserable. It would be pretty miserable if, you know, hitting things with a stick repeatedly for, coins or whatever was a more attractive relationship to like labor as a how much of my face can I stand seeing right now? Not that much. But it would, that was like is something. Oh, or hey, are you okay? Pop culture, uh, literature, or consumer entertainment. Um, a lot of the media franchise stuff. Well, there's a lot of library books here. Um, it's the same. It's got that, West. It's got that same. Uh, this person feels really bad about themselves. That's what qualifies you to be the protagonist of a story. Is you have to be basically uh, in an equivalent situation to someone starting a video game or someone attempting to purchase something or someone uh, logging into a platform, right? Where you or registering for a platform, an online platform, where you gain some kind of benefit from the platform from using it more. Um, so all of these things are like, you know, it's kind of like a system of currency. If the basic unit of the system of currency was, hey, use our system of currency. Um, I don't know what, the kind of like how to make that into an allegory. It's uh, it's kind of like a multicellular life form. Starting off like this is how many cells you have right now. You have the lowest possible number. Um, like the mindset of a virus uh, is an individual thing that has to spread. Um, that sort of state of discontentment is kind of a universal trope of uh, a lot of stuff in consumer culture. Obviously, not everything. Um, the more kind of specialist and technically useful. kind of pieces of equipment and parts for things. Those are they have that higher barrier to entry, but the the pop culture is designed to be kind of uh, this open transaction that draws people in. Um, anyway, my thing that I was going to say that I kind of started writing down on my little chat comments. Um, I don't remember why I wanted to. I think I had an alternate mood planned where I was going to be able to record myself being talkative. Right now, I don't feel very talkative. Maybe if I go further away from where other people might overhear me, I'll feel less offended or less troubled. Um, I kind of have the same attitude about uh, expressing myself just at all, as I would, like uh, with having the sound on for like a porn ad, social situation. Um, it's just a sense of humiliation. Um, I mean, I definitely don't think it matters what I think or that I think. I don't think it's something that's able to have any impact. Um, I don't think you can convince people of anything other than what they're already sort of convinced of themselves, and that comes from their own sort of physiological inevitabilities. Um, and, linguistically and culturally, I think a lot of the pontification and exegesis. Uh, anyway, the majority of what people broadcast is just a kind of open-ended circle jerk where they're trying to entice other people into participating in something that's either designed to improve their own circumstances, or they would get a benefit of it from it, or they're attempting some kind of reciprocity for the sake of luring other people in and uh, pandering. Um, for instance, most fiction that's written as entertainment um, is kind of a masturbatory, you know, uh, way of trying to congratulate and flatter the ego of whatever the target audience is. You find a bunch of people who are vulnerable in a susceptible kind of way, and essentially you're putting them down by saying something nice about them, or pandering them to them, or showing them any kind of affection. Um, it's like a pity kitty kind of thing, and that's sort of the basis for like international Western development, foreign aid, and the sort of continuing the tradition of uh, sort of Christian missionaries and proselytization, and the idea that other people are in some kind of state of 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 ignorance, and that you can improve their lot uh, by, you know, dissimulating or whatever, sharing your own crap with them. Um, that in this culture, that's kind of where we're at with like science communicator stuff. The idea of being a science communicator is the same idea that there's something good that's sort of external to the individual self, and you can bring it to other people by explaining it to them until they understand. And it's very much like the notions of religious conversion and things like that. But it's also prostitution. It's also how a virus would articulate its own ego if a, you know, a disease had a thought process. Um, so in that sense, I think that if you do have an individual insight or a unique intellect, or if there is something to the idea of the self as a discrete and valuable thing, um, that's not something that can be transferred in the way that we want to convey it. Um, Someone might benefit from some kind of shared, uh, like mutual recognition of something, and you could call that a truth. Um, and I think I mentioned the flesh simulator guy. The politics of that, the politics of the whole um, sort of reversal of uh, Zionism and anti-Zionism, or whatever, Semitism and anti-Semitism, or whatever. Anything to do with any of those, like attendant realities. And the next video that pops up in my little feed on my little garbage machine is that guy uh, who went all wackadoo. I don't know if he was actually on drugs or if it was just kind of like a, you know, schizo posting kind of thing, but he got a lot of flack for it. It just lacked the sort of editorial um, coherence of what people, the kind of content that people were associating with. What if all pissed? And all of these people, they're they're different kinds of the same stereotype of sort of isolated male disaffection. Um, and that's not even that specific. It's just sort of like someone is alive right now and they're frustrated about something. And there are, larger and smaller and uh, you know, more tolerated and less tolerated groups of people that sort of articulate or speak for a concept. You know, there are cultural and sort of instinctual stereotypes that people have around who would care about, cooking a nice home style meal for a bunch of friends and family. And there are cultural stereotypes around who would be pissed off and want to do something about it. But those are just stereotypes, and anyone can have any of those kinds of feelings. I could want very much to pay my taxes and contribute more to the local economy by working harder to earn more money so that I could uplift you know my neighbors and the less fortunate, and and show gratitude to the you know wealth that has supported the the infrastructure that I've relied on in my life. Like I could decide to devote my own uh, life to contributing more to the tax base to show appreciation for the paved roads and uh, you know flush toilets. Um, but those are sort of esoteric projections, and the normal presumption that I think people make about each other. I mean, if you think about my own experience of that, my own experience of being with someone and having any kind of reason to assume that they're doing something for me. Um, People assume you're motivated by sort of base physiological drive. Oh, he's just hungry. He's just horny. He's just tired. He's just, frustrated somehow. And that's the majority of the interactions you're going to have. Someone's going to try and sell you uh, comfort or sort of animal comfort. Um, and that might not necessarily be what you would like to expend your time and your effort, moving yourself towards in a given moment. But it's the most achievable way of rearranging material reality. It's very difficult to, uh, you know, prosecute like civil corruption or expose a moral wrong and seek justice or um, even manage bureaucratic uh, you know expectations or what is imposed clerically on a person. Just doing your own homework uh, is a sort of infinite kind of thing. You can always add additional homework, additional study, additional preparation. Like, oh, you did this stage of stuff in order to be better prepared. Now we can be even more better prepared by doing this other thing. You have 1,000 band-aids in a metal box. Now you can order some other kind of thing so that you can be even more prepped, for an even wider variety of circumstances. You can have a first aid kit. You can have two first aid kits. You can have, fuel stored for something. You can have different machines that require that fuel. You can have a machine to fix the you know, other machine. So you can keep going in that direction of prophylaxis, um, and in the sense of education or training or preparation or whatever. And in part of the pop cultural sense of that originally addressing this, because I was writing a comment after I read something about toxic newts on Hacker News, some article, science article, bullshit. Um, then there was some additional dating article or whatever crap, and I don't know if I was having this reaction to uh, one of my wife's uh, latest people in her feed, who's this guy who lost his like tech job or whatever, and he complains about dating, sexual market value kind of crap, like a lot of people. And this just happens to be the one that she's uh, amusing, herself with while she does the dishes, or something, because she feels like she can have some kind of feedback there, some kind of participatory kind of thing. Um, but something about the interactions with that, I didn't want to try and respond to her about bringing that up, and coming up with this thing. Uh, my response, my retort. But I did feel some vague, bizarre desire to articulate it. And I don't remember why that was. I think I'd been in a situation where I hadn't spent any time having any kind of verbal interaction at all. And I've been kind of, back in that. Well, to go into that and like the whole thing, I was just going to say that the whole like incel stuff, or the loneliness epidemic stuff, and all of that. You could chalk up a lot of the male hostility as kind of similar to, like predator prey toxicity and aposematic coloring. Like don't eat me, I'm poisonous. That kind of thing. Um, if being in a relationship is extremely uh, likely to, destroy someone socioeconomically, if they might lose their house, if they might lose their job, if they might lose their, position in a lot of ways, if they might end up stuck much worse off, supporting children that they don't see and might not even be biologically theirs, um, not really having any ability to even crawl out of the hole they're in financially in order to look okay anymore. Basically going around wearing a hair shirt for the rest of their wage earning, life of serfdom. Um, if that's their perspective on it, is that they had this chance to have sex with young, attractive, fertile, you know, members of the opposite sex, and then once this sort of like relationship coupling happened, that then they were uh, sort of shackled to a bunch of economic and social detriment that was like having to service a loan, and it was like debt peonage. Peonage, um, that would mean that you would sort of more carefully guard your limited opportunities to actually commit to a relationship, because it would be more costly, or potentially more costly. If you were a taxi cab driver and every single person that uh, you know, could pick up and put in your taxi cab might tell you to drive them through a war zone where your taxi cab might get hijacked and you might get shot, or you know a bomb might blow you up or something. You would have you'd be far less sort of like you know willing to put your best foot forward. And there's a variety of situations where you just try and uh, say, "Oh, I'm a loser. I'm not a taxi cab. I'm not. I don't even have a car. What's this? No, this is a big pile of poop with wheels sticking out of it or something. Don't worry about it." Um, you would do things to um, push people away, um, and being unattractive would be a better relationship strategy uh, than doing anything to generically improve your ability to get positively evaluated by an observer. Um, but anyway, that was kind of beside the point of of kind of where the initial motive was. The initial motive was that I've not spoken to anyone or spoken. Had, I have not attempted to put language skills to use in such a consistently uh, unbroken period of time. And then the sort of forcible interaction that I had when I did interact with anybody was so negative. And this is, if you're in the kind of circumstances that somebody like me has gone through, you probably encountered situations where you were supposed to shut up and not have any kind of anything verbally to do with anyone around you. In my case, it's the sort of healthcare system and the mental illness shit and the idea of public authority figures within my own life. Um, that from my perspective and the perspective of some people close to me occasionally, the consensus is that all of those institutions or all of those relationships have failed me as a participant, and that my interaction has not actually been in bad faith. Um, it's kind of like going to uh, the shopping mall to sit on Santa's lap, as a child, and ostensibly that's like a real kind of social function of um, actual human life and normality. Um, but if you can't articulate anything honestly, and you're honestly attempting to sort of participate, um, it's kind of strange. If a child is told, okay, you're going here to be nice and tell Santa what you want for Christmas to celebrate the joyous holiday events and to sort of spread holiday cheer. But you have to say something that sounds socially appropriate, and you know for whatever reason, what that child is articulating is kind of like outside of what is culturally appropriate, um, which is it's extraordinarily possible. It's conceivable, um, in the Joe Rogan kind of thing. You could say something about Christian religion. You could say something that has something to do with church going. You could say something that has something to do with uh, people being kind and generous to each other. Um, you know, the kid could say something about wanting all of the children who went to visit Santa, you know, to, to ask for Christmas gifts in the mall, could articulate some wish like that all the children who were there in that moment, and the Santa in the mall could all celebrate Christmas together and, have a Christmas dinner together or something. And it might be a perfectly, you know, socially acceptable sounding focus group tested, audience group kind of thing for a child to say. But if there's some kind of persistent, like this is outside the bounds of how I want this to go. Um, an example of that is kind of like all of the jobs that have anything to do with. Where's my fucking phone? Why isn't this guy texting me? And a few, victims. You know, my relationship to the thing that I'm talking to right now, which is an inanimate object um, that other people can also interact with, sort of like if we all had the same pet rock. Um, and I mean, from my perspective, there's no reason to think that me having this conversation with my laptop turned on and the microphone turned on and the thing connecting to the thing where this is getting recorded turned on. That's really no different than if I was talking to a pet rock. I really don't have any expectation whatsoever, and I'm looking for an actual rock so that I can sort of model the. This isn't technically, totally technically a rock. It's a Lego minifig hat. But if I was having all the conversations that I've tried to have with this piece of plastic in my hand, instead of engaging in the pretense that I could interact with another living thing in a way that meant anything to me. Um, it's not something where I could tell you I know I would be worse off or would not be better off. Um, the relationship I have to the authority figures in my life is that people are bad and that they're uh, a bad thing that is mean, that I don't like, that I can't, you know, um, I can't defy, you know, and they make me do things that are evil that I don't want to do, uh, and they do things that are evil to me. Um, the most significant part of that is work, and the parts of it that I object to aren't the parts of it that hurt um, from some perspective, from the normal kind of like like this is putting physical wear and tear on my body kind of thing. Well, that would be true of just about anything. If I was voluntarily climbing around in the woods for fun, I would enjoy exerting myself perhaps more, um, but it would be more socially deleterious. I wouldn't be making any money doing it, which is kind of ridiculous to call it what I get paid or the interaction I have to my labor to be making money. But I would be more indebted for food and shelter, which is basically all I have, the sort of like purchasing power to do is just to continue experiencing food and shelter at a level that is to me repulsive. Um, I hate my meals. I hate my home. I hate my, you know, where I go every day and what I do kinds of, you know, as consumable experiences. Uh, it's not that none of that is good enough and that I need it to be better. It's that the glaring uh, sort of dysfunction or the imperfections of those kinds of experiences, because my own, you know, sociological role is like, well, you better fix that. That's who you are. If you're in a situation like my own. Um, so all I'm going to notice about anything is that this part wasn't done correctly. I empathize with my asparagus. If my asparagus is sautéed improperly, I don't have the ability to eat it and enjoy it. All I have the ability to do is to diagnose it. Um, and I can diagnose my car, and I can diagnose my commute, and I can diagnose uh, the the structural state of repair of my, or the engineering, loads of my domicile or whatever. I can diagnose my teeth, but I can't feel good. Like good is actually good, or that feeling good is a thing. Um, and then you can diagnose yourself with anosognosia or whatever, or whatever the inability to uh, experience pleasure uh, thing was, which is also bullshit, because I'm perfectly happy to do lots of different things. It's just not good if I do something that I enjoy. Uh, if I enjoy scratching an itch, it's not good. It's it's bad for you to do that. If I pick my nose, I don't like the booger in my nose, and I don't want it there, and I'm happy that I got it out. But it's not good to pick your nose. And the way in which something is frowned upon, or the I don't experience it as guilt. I experience it as, here's something that exposes you to criticism. And that's what if I was like putting my hand over part of an elephant, I wouldn't think about the texture or the sensation, except in the sense of, maybe there's something wrong with this thing that I'm touching, and that's why I'm touching it, is to try and figure out what's wrong with it. Or maybe someone is going to see me doing this act, and they're going to think that something is wrong with me because I'm doing this thing. Maybe I'm in the wrong place. Maybe I'm touching this thing in the wrong place to diagnose, what it is. Um, or maybe it's just somehow there's something wrong with it. That's what you can guess. You can, without actually participating in in you know the you're just there, and your assumption is it's not the right place to be. That you're going to guess wrong. Uh, so that assumption that you're going to guess wrong is sort of a correct assumption, um, including as it relates to your own sensory experiences. Uh, you can say that you don't know how something tastes because you moved it to the wrong part of your tongue or your palate, or you didn't chew it properly, or you took a bite of too many things at once, or you took it off the plate the wrong way, or you used the wrong utensil. Uh, there's just that sort of infinite number of ways of evading the idea of being uh, wholeheartedly present in the way that the interlocutor would like you to be. If someone says to you, well, did you enjoy your meal? You know, you can lie and say it was wonderful, it was amazing, without having any real knowledge of whether or not it was amazing, or feeling qualified to distinguish that kind of thing. Um, but you're being honest, and supposedly there's some kind of value in honesty. In almost every case, if you directly confront someone and say, "Do you want me to tell the truth?" They'll say yes. Um, and then if they tell you no, you can just make up a random guess that has absolutely nothing to do with if someone's interrogating you and you ask them, "Do you want me to be honest?" and they tell you no, their next question could be, "How tall are you?" And you could say blueberry. Um, and then you know you could have the same interaction again. I thought you told me you wanted me to make things up, and they could say not like that, and you could say, "Okay, wait, I'll try again." Raspberry, and that process could continue. There's no reason to believe that you can participate in an interaction if your experience has been that you can't. Um, the thing that felt like it might be a good idea to say is that um, like if you think of an authority figure like a doctor, like a psychiatrist or a policeman or whatever, as like a carpenter, um, and they're putting pieces together, right? And you are a nail from their perspective. You're something that they're going to apply their professional training on, and there's going to be some kind of interaction and point of contact, and then you're going to change your position in the universe because they're going to intervene on your, you know, uh, existence, and they're going to try and say, "I'm going to try and put this thing, the structure, back together, better. So I'm going to take this thing that's out of order or loose, and I'm going to put it where it's supposed to go." Um, a carpenter in the 20th century or the 19th century, after the advent of galvanized wire or whatever, um, the generation my father was in and various people's fathers were in, uh, you might have seen somebody who was attempting to model adult competence to you without, you know, um, like, "Son, let me show you that it's possible to try and be a person sincerely and do a good job and whatever." Um, might have fucked up a nail with a hammer in such a way that they could not use it anymore. It was no longer something that they could use as a nail because of the way they hit it, whether they bent it so much or they, you know, broke it trying to pull it out, or if, had like a flat cap on it. They bent the cap somehow. But there's just a variety of ways to model something there where there's like an irreparable damage that it doesn't go back in the box, and it won't it it doesn't nail anymore. You can't use it to do the thing that you were doing with your tool before. And um, in my experience of uh, Western medicine, psychiatric care, talk therapy, uh, all of the different stuff kind of taken together as a gestalt. The health insurance system, school nurse, public elementary school. Um, the point is to get away from like the part of the bell curve where you are genuinely believing that you can go to this source for help when you have a problem you don't understand, an emergency that you you can't handle on your own. That's the big part of it. The big part of medicine is that you're responsible for your own body existing. You're you, and it's your you. It's not someone else's physical stuff. And so if you shit your pants, you have to wipe your own ass and clean up the mess. It's not someone else's problem past a certain point in life, and that sort of like fledging stages of independence and sort of social disconnection from obligation is one way. Um, we have lots of systems that try and produce the effect of saying that that's not so, that we do have an intricate web of uh, communal relationships where that's how we actually function, and um, that's something that society provides. But in reality, that's not society, and that's a private uh, sort of hostility to society. The family, your biological, endpoints in both directions, where you came from and where you're going, your descendants and offspring, and your ancestors and living relatives or whatever. Those individuals are working together against the goals of the society at large. And the society at large is attempting to extract as much of the resources and value of your family from you through its interactions with you, the individual. If a pimp is exploiting you know little girls and women on the street, that pimp isn't just trying to manipulate that one individual, for the sake of gaining something from that one individual. They're trying to take that, you know, fishhook kind of relationship they have to that particular, you know, woman, and then pull not just her, out, but also all of the people connected to her. They're attempting to extract as much of the sort of human animal, I'll provide food, I'll provide shelter, I'll provide, labor, all of the stuff that goes into a person's existence, the way, you know, animals care for their offspring, or animals in a group, support each other, people in a family support one another. The labor system outside of the worker. If you think of the pimp as the employer and the prostitute as the laborer or the employee, um, or you think of the pimp as the government and you think of the prostitute as the citizen. Okay, and this is the same thing. Um, it's not just you that is being manipulated and taken advantage of, and that's not what's explicitly being done. What's explicitly being done is there's an attempt to leverage that system to get as much out of uh, of that outsider, right, as possible. And what the society does that the individual does not know as a life form is they don't abandon in the same way these other organisms. Um, for uh, the society, an individual human being, and the people that they care about, and the people who care about them, and the people who are interested in them, and the people they're interested in, are food. It's they're a way of reducing the amount of effort that society has to go to in order to get calories and survive. and increasing the you know um, biomass of the society as an organism. Um, but it's not a replacement for the sort of communal, colonial, uh, socio-biological, you know, the intricacies that have something to do with, these are your biological parents, or these are your children, or this is someone who's close enough to that they might actually give a shit. That's different, and that comes from uh, an unspoken kind of understanding that's a spoken understanding that these people are going to continue their interactions and be a supportive uh, communal unit. Um, um, so all of that, my initial point uh, to the like the personal life people on the internet that my wife was following was the thing that I was saying before about a post-somatic coloring, and then the thing to the flesh simulator people who talk about the generic politics instead of the personal, um, was um, uh, um, but the idea that you have uh, uh, free speech, right? Um, it's that kind of Santa Claus idea. Um, Certainly, you can say just about anything in a certain context. I could say that you know hypothetically maybe there's a way to look at declining birth rates as a uh, hypothetically we're making like a philosophy class argument that they're like a humane and um, morally positive form of genocide. If you can imagine reducing birth rates as much as possible without doing some kind of bad thing, um, by increasing the amount of like hedonic, uh, quality of life for all of the living participants. So these organisms get trapped and spayed and neutered, um, but then they're returned to their natural environment, and they receive lifetime uh, freedom from predators and uh, food and shelter and comprehensive veterinary care or whatever. And that's some sort of like uh, you know worthwhile trade-off, that it's better to experience as many decades as possible of uninterrupted, shitting and pissing and eating and sleeping, um, than it is to experience any suffering. And that if you can, shit and piss and eat and sleep for a million years, that's that's you know uh, quantitatively superior, no matter what, to living for 5 minutes or 5 months or the month of May, or like a mayfly, or whatever, and you know better to have loved than lost, right? And never to have loved at all, kind of crap. And that suffering is so bad that it should be genocided. You should genocide suffering, and that it's good to do that because suffering is bad. Um, and this goes back to this same point that I was saying about the thing that I couldn't remember was called anhedonia. I forget what I said instead of anosognosia, uh, which I forget what that is. I don't know if it's the thing where you see colors as like smells or tastes. Um, but anyway, uh, so if you're even attempting to argue something philosophical sincerely, like, hey, maybe there's no God, or okay, maybe there's a God, right? The funny thing about sincerity, right, is okay, maybe there's something in the universe that could be telling me what to do right now that's better than going off of my own intuitions and abilities to form, like uh, articulate my own thoughts, right? Maybe there's something else that I could rely on uh, that would be superior, whether it's morally superior, spiritually, whatever, or just like a better outcome. I should listen to these instructions in this book about what I should do in this situation, and I shouldn't think about my own, like attitudes. I should just go by what this says in this book, or whatever. Um, maybe this uh, funny cave with a weird noise coming out of it is what I should try and interpret as having like a meaningful, or maybe this like pair of dice, or this coin, or this fortune cookie, or this Ouija board. Uh, I should use these things instead of thinking, well, I don't like this person, and it feels good when I punch something I don't like, or when I'm mad, So I'm going to put these things together, on my own, and sort of work this out for myself. Um, an example of that kind of thinking, um, my wife, her like, I don't know how she came to this. It seems kind of lazy and low class. But when she's got one of her kids who's climbing a tree, the stereotypical, I'm too fat and old and out of shape to try and help you kind of statement. Sorry, kid, is, you got up there on your own, figure out how to get down on your own, kind of thing, like you're teaching them some valuable lesson about solving your own problems. Uh, um, well, it isn't necessarily so that either extreme is, you know, preferable interpretation. Um, and in that same sense, maybe I shouldn't go around trying to figure out which fortune cookie uh, I should, wholeheartedly apply to this situation in my own life, or how I could make it the astrologer's responsibility how I act during this, hostage situation that I'm in as some kind of participant. Like, I'll call up Nancy Reagan's astrologer and I'll say, "There's a man with a gun here. What do you think I should do right now?" There's no um, resorting to extremes seems like more of a admission of not knowing how to resolve the situation on your own and asking for help tacitly without expecting help. This is what I'm going to do because God knows I don't know what I should do, so I'm going to do this randomized kind of thing. But by the same token, consistently relying on your own judgment is kind of like always tossing a coin in the air. It sort of abrogates responsibility to the other possibility, being more valuable. And it's certainly true that there are plenty of situations in which any individual would say, my own judgment might be superior in this case, and then there might be another case where there is something else that I could refer to, like assembling a piece of, consumer product like furniture or whatever on your own. You've got an instruction manual, and sometimes you don't use the instruction manual because it's not uh, necessary to kind of try and take the time to uh, orient yourself to the way that the instructions are written in order to go through the task, go through the process of familiarizing yourself with the instructional material. It's kind of like new math, the idea of new math, where there's a new way of teaching something that has existed stably as something that was learned and remains consistent. Math is real in some kind of way that it's not a product of an educational system. 2 plus 2 will still be 4, no matter how many people innovate, on the profession. Uh, so in that sense, um, where the fuck was I? Uh, it might be better to rely on your own judgment sometimes. If you're being asked to learn how to do something you might already know how to do, or whatever your solution is, whatever you know how to do, might make more sense than submitting to a novel procedure, uh, like surgery. You know, doctor, it hurts when I do this. Your options are don't do that or have this risky surgery. Maybe that's not in your best interest. And that's true of drug use. That's true of uh, going to the gym and powerlifting or whatever. It's true of a variety of things. CrossFit or whatever. Um, you could do more damage in the process of trying to improve something. Uh, it's true of doing like an upgrade on computer hardware at work, where you have a big complex system that is responsible for some task that has to do with how the business makes money. And if you do something that interrupts that process, it might really mess up the business uh, a lot more than the value of what you're doing to try and improve things. We put flying toaster screensavers on all the workstations, so or whatever. Um, but the relevant point with the flight simulator and the terrorist renditioning of you know uh, peace-loving American citizens like me, um, And I don't really know how I would feel if I was, uh, arrested by the government, because they thought I was uh, a danger to myself or others, on some political scale. Um, I've gone out of my way in my life. I really have. Not very far out of my way, but I've just, the laziest possible kind of, um, uh, not offending. You know, um, I have no respect for um, human rights or the law or people's dignity or the Constitution or the Founding Fathers or God or true love or those are all bullshit things to me. I think those are bullshit things. I think they are made up bullshit things that aren't real and that mostly when people talk about them they're just trying to defend their own lifestyle, perpetuate their own self-interest and advocate for their own superiority or make themselves out to be something important or good or decent or trying to be respected or whatever. But I think, you know, human beings are basically evil monsters. Um, that doesn't mean that I can, like, pick up my sandal and try and smush them like cockroaches to do anybody any favors because who am I doing any favors to? People, right? If you smash a bunch of cockroaches in your house when you're a human being because cockroaches are bad, that's for the sake of the human beings in the house. If the human beings and the cockroaches are essentially an equivalency of pestilence, vermin, and you harm one on behalf of the other, um, I mean, in a sense, you've proven the point that you're a pestilent organism, but you've also picked a side. Um, I don't think it would be better if cockroaches and worms and maggots and you know uh, you know fungus or whatever were consuming all the human flesh that was laying around rotting, instead of people experiencing their lives as a philosophical, like, hedonic calculus. It's not. There's no way to improve the situation by harming people uh, in some kind of overall systemic thing where it's like, there I fixed human infidelity, or there I fixed you know human duplicity, or I fixed people being bad at math, or making promises they can't keep, or cheating on their taxes, or putting more food on their plate than they can actually eat at a buffet. It won't happen again anymore ever because I fixed it. Now they won't get cancer because when they go out in the sunshine, they'll realize when they're starting to burn, and they'll realize they have to do something about it. I don't I don't think it works like that. Um, I think there is a degree to which people could be more in tune with their own senses and their own environment, and they could realize, okay, the amount of flattery that I'm experiencing right now, I'm not in a good situation, and I'm going to leave it because I know what's happening to me is I'm being cooked. Um, there's a variety of ways where something in a system could have responded differently, and even if it was still vulnerable, it could have prevented whatever the negative consequences of the failure were in practice. But that varies. Uh, I still feel like I have more control and that I've shown more control, um, than a lot of people, and that, you know, a lot of the sort of negative, um, like I would never, I don't think I could say that I struggled with mental health or that the people in my life did. Um, I don't think I could say, uh, anything about that, honestly. Just like I can't say that I want Santa to get me, a new car, right? Um, in my case, I don't really believe in Santa Claus. Not really. I mean, it's a nice idea. It would be a nice idea if there was some way to fix the human brain so that the human brain was better. Um, but that doesn't jive with my experience of reality. Um, what I saw people act out sort of violently their own emotional disappointments and distress. Um, I can do that. I can say things that are inappropriate. I can make faces that are inappropriate. I can make noises that are inappropriate. I can act out in a way that's inappropriate. And that to me is the same as being crazy. I can say that this Lego hat just told me to kill everyone on Earth by peeing in a reservoir. But first, I have to eat uh, some disgusting, like off rotting food, right? I don't know. I'm making it up. I'm making up the idea that this hat is telling me what to do. No, you're not, David. You cannot resist. Like, oops, I dropped the hat. Um, no, it's backwards. No, turn me right. Don't. I can't, I can't sell it, right? And I don't think the people who say they're insane that I've met who seem to believe they were insane, sort of, were very convincing at all. Um, there's a girl in the car with me after I told her I wouldn't take her to a restaurant. Uh, I was driving her home, um, and she's like, "Oh, I'm freaking out! I'm having a soda." Oh, Satan, hail Satan! And just all this stuff like that, and it's really cheesy and it's loud, and everybody in the car, I'm not by myself, we're all saying, can you stop? Could you please stop? You know, and it's just basically an adult temper tantrum. It's not very adult, but it's just someone who's old doing the same thing that a little kid does when a little kid has a temper tantrum. And when a little kid has a temper tantrum, they're not diseased. They're just trying to get what they want, and they don't seem to have any kind of like coherent way of achieving that. So they're just doing whatever. People who can't swim and they're in the water and they're splashing around, um, they're reacting to the fact that they can't get their body to stay above the water. It's not irrational for them to do something that doesn't work when they don't know how to do it a way that works. If you're in the middle of the air and you're going to hit the ground and you don't have a parachute, and you're doing that. I mean, it's a more reasonable reaction than be like, oh, I'm falling to my doom. Hmm. or I mean, you might think some methodology for like spreading out or like trying to catch as much air as possible or something. But if you find yourself in circumstances where there's that kind of impulsive claustrophobia where something is everything was fine up until a moment ago and now just everything is just negative, you um, it's not it's not a mystery why something would act in a way that's flagrant or obnoxious to others. In this case, this person really didn't seem to want what was happening to happen. And what was happening was I said I was going to do something that I decided to do because I wasn't getting any kind of agreement to do anything together that I could agree to. If I'm going to, you know, spend money on somebody else, it's probably not going to be because they just demanded it. It's going to be because there's some kind of expectation. Like, okay, uh, if you can fix my car for $200, this other person told me it would be $600. So I'll give you $200 if you're really telling me really sincerely that you can fix my car. Maybe that's a good idea. But I'm not going to give you the $200 until you fix my car. Um, but if the expectation is like, okay, I'm going to do whatever I want, and maybe you want me around, so uh, anytime anything is happening that I don't like, I'm just going to act out. Well, with a little kid, that's understandable. With children, the thing that you're experiencing, as a parent or as a bystander, is it's obvious that if an animal can assume that something isn't going to murder it, um, that it can just kind of like float through the situation without really uh, applying uh, any kind of like uh, restrictions on its own behavior other than what it has to in order to not get in trouble with that situation where it's safe around another living thing. Um, and that's the expectation of offspring to their parents. Is this crocodile isn't going to eat you because you're its baby crocodile. You're swimming around in the mouth right there, making little crocodile noises, and it's cute. Um, but that's a unique circumstance. That kind of, it's not like it's like you're forgiven for being alive. And the notion of free speech, the notion of like the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence, and the notion of human rights as a just a concept, that the law is based on human rights instead of sort of like the dignity of God, right? It's the same thing. It's like the thing that is going to punish you if you fuck up is it holds your physical existence as somehow sacred because of itself, and you are a monument. Your life is an expression of what is good about this outside powerful entity that you have that obligation to. Now you can spin that out into secular ease. You can say, well, you're a living organism that is descended in an unbroken line from all of the living organisms that preceded you, going as far back in time as that chemical process implies. There were chemical reactions that formed, you know, uh, other molecules, and those chemical reactions continued on to, the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. So you're part of an unbroken chain of of physical chemical reactions going back billions and billions of years. Um, and in the sense of like somebody going to college and setting up like a laboratory experiment with a couple, test tubes or something and some enzymes or some reactants or whatever, that's profound. um, and to say that the way in which you intervene on that process with your individual will is not as important and not as significant as showing some kind of respect to this cosmically grandiose thing that preceded you and that could continue on as far as you know, uh, into some kind of infinite, uh, or you know omniscient or whatever kind of future. um, it does make sense to say that you're less than all this other stuff that's more. That your lifespan on Earth is dwarfed by all these other things that were alive, that were part of the same thing that you would continue on to. Um, and in that sense, you can make the religious argument. Um, the but you can make the secular argument too. Um, but the problem with the secular argument, with the notion of legal jurisprudence and the authority of government and all that deriving from human rights, uh, is the any application of the law, right? If the consequences of the law are significant fines or jail time, for example, right? If I break a law, I don't get fined $20. Uh, if I break a law and I get fined $20, for example, or $10 or $5, the administrative, uh, you know, time and effort in my life that I have to devote to paying the fine is more significant than the actual fine. Um, it would make more sense if my labor was productive and if what I was doing in society was actually like meaningful, like any part of it. If you were a surgeon or if you were a whatever, if the penalty was just you had to go do your job without getting paid for that amount of time. Um, uh, the way that the profit motives are incentivized from the reality of it. Um, my argument is basically that people don't know what to do with all the other people who exist. They don't know how to deal with the magnitude and the like if you think about the idea of a body count, uh, in like a person's personal life, and that's something that is just too much to bear, for the average person. There are a lot of perfectly valid arguments to do with that. Um, there's no reason why someone wouldn't hold you to the expectations they held someone else to. So if there's someone else that they can refer to, even in memory, and just say, well, this person, could have made more money, or this person could have made a better sandwich, or this person didn't stink as bad, like physically stink, or this person's voice wasn't as annoying, or this person knew what this word with 3 syllables meant, or this person didn't mispronounce, uh, something that made them look ignorant, or this person didn't get math wrong, or this person paid their bills on time. It's like Three Little Pigs in reverse. And I mean that very literally. Uh, Instead of being in one relationship made of bricks, right? Uh, or one relationship made of twigs or whatever, you're just stuck with the big bad wolf. Um, and that's because there's this precedent that says, well, this was better than what's existing right here, and what was there before that was better was finite and deteriorated. It's not around anymore because I'm here with this loser. Um, and that's on the personal level. On the personal level, the simple, uh, you know, comparative in the value of human life, like right. Uh, how do you value a person? How can you say that you value a person at all? And it's the same thing is modeled uh, in the law, um, or in philosophy or whatever. If you have cultural connection with, here's like this concept of God, and here's this concept of a human being, and you're saying that human life has value. Uh, the equivalency, you can always add, you know, one more to it, and fucks it up. Uh, and in Abrahamic creation myth, God exists and God's good. God's actually good. But then he creates a man, and the man isn't good enough, even though the man is something that God made as a copy of God. That wasn't supposed to be God. It wasn't supposed to be like God, but it was supposed to be uh, a riff on what God was, that God was doing to some extent, like a doll, like an American Girl doll. Um, and that thing on its own was somehow inferior enough that it needed a helper, it needed a servant, it needed a service animal, or a security blanket, or I don't know what the meaning of the actual different conceptualizations were uh, in ancient history, and I don't know what the realities that it spoke to were when, however, that story got passed down, what the understanding of the people who were telling the story was, or whatever. There's a lot that it could have been, um, in terms of communicating the nature of male and female, and identity, and lots of different things. But the point is that once you have human beings, right, you have the notion, like a legal code, that they're not good enough and they're going to do things, they're going to be wrong. And the first wrong is not being self sufficient, not being, uh, you put one human being on the planet Earth, they're not gonna finish the job. Um, whatever human beings were put here to do, if you put one human being, they're running around with dinosaurs or whatever, they're all by themselves. Whatever the point of having human beings was, will not be accomplished simply by one of them existing. And that's essentially true. You can kind of appreciate that logic. Uh, you could take the narrative version of it, where you have a character in a story, and you could have an incredibly uh, breathtaking, creative work that described the life of one human being that had no uh, contact with anything else that you could possibly equate with their identity as a human being. Um, Sort of like Gone, right? I love that comic. You could have this lone Tyrannosaurus Rex, teeny Tyrannosaurus Rex that was wandering around in the world. Um, and every single challenge that they encountered could be characterized, or it could be, set in that uh, um, sort of spectacular, um, observant kind of attentional frame where you are paying so much attention to a mote of dust or a speck of shit or whatever that you can hear the voice of David Attenborough or whatever narrating every single uh, operatically grand event of a gust of wind, you know moving this particle, Brownian motion. um, and you could do that with a photon. You could do that with an electron. You could do that with, you know, like we're observing this thing. This thing is doing stuff. We'll watch it do stuff until it ceases to be observable. And that's how you could represent human life. And you could take the entire scope of that, from cradle to grave, as being some kind of um, magnificent, you know, uh, communication of some kind of important point. And, Forrest Gump is that level of dumb. Um, the Red Balloon, or something like that, or some wordless art film where somebody follows like a tumbleweed. Uh, but for, you know, individual actions to be, like if I go outside and I try and do something to improve my own health and to try and do something well, uh, like I go for a run, I have to think about what I know about approximate averages, the 8-minute mile. So I have to assume, okay, this is how far I went and this is how long it took me to do this. I did this in a way that was constructive, or I didn't do it in a way that was constructive because it wasn't what I was focusing on, or I'm not, or I could assess my own, um, capacity as not being able to do it constructively. Uh, I mean, it's stupid to try and transport, any physical material by having a person move their body with it and carry it somewhere. But I have to do that with my own body. I can't click on myself and put myself in a warehouse and then send myself in a shipping container to get around. I have to actually move my own body, my own mass. That's something that I'm responsible for. And in that way, saying, can I move over, 1 mile of terrain with my feet on my own in 8 minutes uh, under my own power? And then to do that, That's like, okay, yeah, that's good. It's good if I can do that. Um, but uh, that's in a narrow case, right? Most of the situations where a human being is traversing the surface of the earth, the objective isn't to see how quickly they can use their own body to go the maximum distance in the shortest amount of time, for a set uh, case of conditions that can then be compared conveniently to, the way that other people would do that in that situation. Um, it's very much like how fast I should be working if I'm doing my job at work, and my job at work is the same job as lots of other people at work. That's a way to make it easier for other people who have a different role at my job in terms of evaluating my own performance. It's about making it easier for someone else to evaluate me. And in that way, right, the notion of God being good is a target for people to evaluate what being good means. And then it becomes an equivalency with human rights. Uh, if you have natural rights or if you have human rights, it still hinges on the notion of good. Well, is it good to go to heaven? If people are imperfect, should they just be punished? Shouldn't God just start over with better, organisms? Wouldn't it be better if God replaced us with angels? Wouldn't it be better if God punished us for, wrongdoing? Why is it better to forgive us, uh, and then have us continue to be, uh, you know, sinful or whatever, or incapable of transcending sin, right? Or whatever. Um, and then the solution to a lot of those things is you just get to the part where it's the end and they live happily ever after, and you don't have to cognitively process. There's further steps and further uh, stuff to go. Um, And if there is an externality that is greater than you that you have to refer to in order to, make correct choices, it doesn't matter whether you're schizophrenic and you think that your microwave is, beaming signals into your brain that are telling you, either you articulate that. Um, it's like, okay, motherfucker, let's go over to where your microwave is and let's listen to your microwave. Why are we having this conversation right now if your microwave told you to shoot Ronald Reagan, and you know that that's what's supposed to happen? Let's go talk to your microwave. Come on, let's go. Let's go camp outside of Jodie Foster's house, or read The Catcher in the Rye, and let's like put all of the letters on every page of the entire book of The Catcher in the Rye, in on all the walls of our house, and let's count up all the letter G's and letter H's and letter P's and letter E's, and let's do all the math that we can to see if there's a secret code in there. Um, let's apply gematria or whatever to all of it. If something is a more correct original source, like a historian or a journalist, if you can interview something that's more authoritative than sticking the microphone in your own face, if you can go like that, and then it's better. Um, then why not just go like that everywhere? Why not go to the ends of the earth Point, you do Monty Python and point it at the rocks, with the waves crashing over them. Point it at the holes in the mud, from the bubbles, plop, 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 Um, and you know, it becomes incredibly questionable whether there is someone who went through 8 years of medical school who's sitting there and talking to you, and you're telling them, "Oh, okay, I think maybe it's possible that I believed something that something else, conveyed to me was a message that was intended for me to understand, and that understanding that was important." You could say that about this. I could be talking to somebody out there, and you could be somebody out there who's listening to this, and you could think to yourself, "Oh wow, that's essentially true. I didn't want to believe in my own mind and heart that my dog was telling me to murder the president of the United States. Uh, that's not actually how I felt. I just didn't know how to articulate my own feelings in a way that I believed was culturally appropriate. And I thought it would be better if I said that rather than say, I hate this person who's in charge, and I wish I could do something unspeakably, you know, perversely humiliating or denigrating or whatever toward them as a kind of equivalence of how I felt uh, denigrated or humiliated by their existence as something that looms, over my own psyche in my daily life, just because I can't say things about them. And it seems like everybody wants to hurt me or doesn't like me. This is this third party, this person say, "Oh, everybody just wants me to roll over and die or get fucked in the ass because of whatever, my socioeconomic circumstances or my skin color or my gender or whatever. They want to, make me their bitch and, you know, then stab me to death, like a prison, kind of like lowest form of life." And um, the, just as a natural way of articulating the same sort of things, just an attempt to say nature is ugly, brutish, and short, or red in tooth and claw, and you're articulating the same negative feeling about something external to yourself, which is to say, I feel threatened. It's like, well, what are you afraid of? I'm kind of afraid of the dark, or I'm kind of afraid of heights, and all of those things are just there to say I am afraid of something that could harm me physically, and my own mortality. Uh, but if we assume that if somebody's up on a precipitous you know high thing, that they could fall off or get pushed off, or something could disintegrate underneath them, or if they assume that in the darkness there's something hostile out there, um, when people articulate things about profoundly, you know, schizo adjacent kind of stuff, there's people out there who hate me and despise me. Uh, but I mean that only in the sense that they're racist against me, and I'm from the correct minority group that can say that I can feel threatened physically by people's hostility towards me, and it doesn't come off as schizo. Um, I think everybody's trying to rape me every time I'm walking around outside, but I have the correct gender and the correct, height and weight and whatever to appear physically non-threatening. So I'm allowed to feel that way. Um, Someone was saying about like the legal system and the notion of self-defense, that If there's a woman who looks like an Olympic shot putter, like a woman's Olympic shot putter, and there's a man who looks like Woody Allen, and uh, the case is that the woman killed the man in self-defense because the man was trying to rape the woman. Um, that is more legally acceptable as an argument, even though the woman weighs 150 pounds more than Woody Allen, and he seems completely physically at a disadvantage, just because of the assumptions that are in play there. That was, in a legal thing, legal lecture about whether or not you could shoot someone so the only point of any of that uh, is all going back to people like Flesh Simulator, people who are advertising sincerely, to some extent, even one micro sincerity of positive integer, uh, actually thinking it's a good idea. They're selling VPNs, or they're selling survival food, or survival whatever, or precious metals, or gun tube, uh, just all of the different ways that you could say, gee, I would like to vote for some other people to be in charge. If we're supposed to believe that we're, you know, democratically participating in our own self governance. Uh, I have different opinions about things than the people who seem to be in charge, who have opinions about things. I disagree with the people who are in charge a little. If you get the inclination to feel that way, and that immediately, breaks the analog needle over to, I must say to people that my dog told me to kill Ronald Reagan, or I must buy, you know, uh, a weatherproof, you know, foil wrapped brick of super male vitality, and water purification tablets, and a survival knife, and a super flashlight. Um, I have to go get a concealed carry permit now because of whether or not I think Jews are slimy, or black people are racist, or gay people are petty. I don't know. But if I have one mean spirited opinion as a generalization, if I don't like somebody, like that, if I'm a liberal, right, and I think the Republicans are bad guys, or they're morons, right, if I'm just I want to be a Democrat, and I just think those Republicans are idiots. If feeling that way, thinking about your thoughts in that way, goes to the other extreme, just on its own. And it's well, they're probably trying to, you know, build a time machine and you know, open a portal and let dinosaurs eat all of the people uh, on the planet, and then replace all of the humans, you know, with dinosaurs. Uh, you know, possibly also take over the planet Mars or something like that. If there's this like bubblegum, uh, you know, lurid cheesecake kind of fantasy involved, you know, like with extra steps, you know, and then I'll be able to, you know, uh, you know, abduct women into sexual slavery and like dress them in you know, gold bikinis, metal bikinis with like a broadsword and a battle axe and a helmet with horns on it and a laser pistol. Uh, you know, then I'll finally be able to like be my true self. You know, if there's this element of uh, like if you think about conventional everyday politics right now, obviously there is some collective popularity to the opinions that you can articulate in public. And right now, from what I gather about, you know, paid broadcast media, you know, I hear the radio, uh, uh, advertising, and news journalism and entertainment, whatever, music, uh, you know, on FM radio in English, aimed at commuters, aimed at working people. Um, you know, government employees or whatever, federal news radio, whatever, C-SPAN, you know, NPR, Bloomberg, uh, news radio kind of stuff, WTOP around here is the call letters for the radio station that plays traffic news, um, commuter news, I guess, um, and all these other things like that, and you know, same goes for all the stuff, all the other stuff out there that we're vaguely aware of. But I don't know if Fox News is still even around, but all the crap like YouTube, Facebook, and social media, blah blah blah. The Gestalt consensus, I think, is that Republicans are greedy, uh, callous, you know, functionally employed people who have enough money or enough of a job or whatever to feel like they're doing well in life without being, you know, intellectually, you know, gifted valedictorians or whatever. Um, and they don't care about what happens to other people. They just care about congratulating themselves for their own success. So they're going to go out and buy a jet ski and a big giant pickup truck or a Humvee or something, a gas guzzler, and they're going to live in a McMansion, and they're going to, uh, you know, have a blonde wife and go on sports vacations and go kill things like fish and hunting trip animals, and they're going to have lots of kids, and they're going to eat bland American food at theme restaurants, and they're going to watch mainstream family films and comedies and action movies and laugh at them and lowbrow entertainment and dumb country music and just all this other stuff. And it's basically like being able to enjoy uh, boring uh, average life, uh, and not sort of like uh, bend over backwards to look um, like you're making a difference to improve things. You know, um, like a wartime economy, victory garden kind of mentality. Um, means you're the asshole. Um, and a lot of that just seems like petty bourgeois suburban contempt for other people, um, who are modeling any kind of form of whatever that's even slightly different than your own. Oh, that neighbor down the street put in a bunch of azaleas, they're invasive. You know, who cares? If you have to find a way to gossip about other people to tear them down, it's over stuff like that. I mean, obviously, it's not helping uh, the planet that there's all these people with giant trucks or ostentatious whatever, but none of it's helping. It doesn't matter if you're driving a Prius or a Tesla or a Hummer or a Ford F-250 back and forth to work, or back and forth on vacation or back and forth to the store. It's all really bad for the world. All of the different things that people's environmental impact, launching a human being into outer space is tremendously, tremendously uh, wasteful. We did it about as much as we could, which was only enough to prove we could do it. Um, the American global technological civilizational prowess is kind of like if somebody consummated their marriage, after their wedding night, and then never had intercourse again with you know the yep, like I did it. Uh, Obviously, we're not actually doing it right. Obviously, we're not fruitfully multiplying all over the universe. Um, there would be plenty of places for more people to try and live if we were terraforming the solar system. They would die in the process. A lot of people would be casualties. A lot of people would lose their lives if we sent spaceships out and we said, okay, figure out how to live on Mars, figure out how to live on the moon. All right, we'll take however much resources it requires to do that, and we'll just send people out there, and maybe somebody will figure it out. Um, uh, the stage we're at right now doesn't seem in that kind of way, in that kind of like, three stigmata Palmer Eldritch kind of way. It doesn't seem like it differs that much from uh, the sort of European colonial age of sail prior to uh, the colonization of in the lead up to that. So medieval Europe before that population explodes out into other parts of the world. But my the thing that I'm belaboring my point on is believing you have human rights, believing you have free speech, believing you have freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of thought or action or deed. Um, you know, I don't care how many of you are out there. If there's one person, or if there's 1,000, or if there's 50 foreign governments who want to send me a message and say, "Hey, Dave, uh, if you want to get together with some people to overthrow the American government and overthrow the like global established order and overthrow the UN and overthrow NATO and overthrow Google and overthrow Twitter and overthrow the manosphere and overthrow you know PETA and overthrow the ASPCA and overthrow Facebook and trying to think of something female to overthrow. Um, but if you're willing to commit yourself, your time and your energy, and expose yourself to drudgery, for the sake of the cause of making things better, sure, we'll work with you. Come on board with us, or we'll join your organization. Um, I would be happy. I would be happy to help any single one individual who wants to uh, actually fuck up the day of people who are out here in the world in a position of control and authority and responsibility and judgment, who are uh, failing, who are deceiving others, who are battery is running low, and I don't know. I think I'm finally to the point where this little box is my friend again. So I'll just keep talking uh, to vent. I'm waiting for my car now. But yeah, I would be happy. I would be happy to do it. I don't think anyone is going to tell me to go and kill the president. I don't think anyone is going to tell me to martyr myself, right? I don't think I'm going to receive that instruction from a cosmological beaming kind of thing. I don't think I'm going to smell uh, a cup of instant noodles and think this smell of this cup of instant noodles is a secret message, telling me to do something. If it was, I don't think I would understand it. Um, I think it would probably just smell like instant noodles to me. I don't think I have the faculty to instantaneously deduce the meaning of a message that's unfamiliar, in language or in, all of that. Um, maybe I could learn to enjoy this video game if I read the instructions and directions and went through the walkthrough or whatever. But I'm probably not going to get that much out of it, even the parts of it that are overtly, obviously, rationally intended for me to try and pay attention to. So even if I believe that I should try and have a delusion or have a hallucination, even if I thought that was my responsibility because I'm supposed to be crazy, um, how are you going to convince me that I would be able to do that correctly? How is this uh, Amazon gift card going to explain to me how I'm trapped in a simulation by Yaldabaoth, and that I need to uh, sodomize John Lennon in public, and then set myself on fire in order to do something. It has something to do with uh, I don't know, Kanye West running for president, or the Kardashians, or just something. But and then on top of all of that, on top of the notion that you're gonna convince me that I'm gonna say something that's offensive in the way that there are individual words that are offensive, and that's one conceptualization. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not retarded. I'm not a retarded faggot. Uh, I mean, there's got to be something that I could say that would just completely get me kicked off of this. And I think I know what that is. Um, uh, but how are you going to convince me that doing that performatively, because I don't like the attention that's been placed on me, and somehow I think that by placing more attention on myself, like shouting fire in a crowded movie theater, is going to give me the opportunity to speak my piece and say something that's going to be treated differently. Like if this is what has happened for 5,000 years. Oh, I got a pimple. Of like recorded civilization, and injustice is a part of human life, and being mistreated and being misunderstood is a part of human life, and not being able to convey a good intention is a part of human life. And then there are so many uncountable people who wanted to participate in something for good reasons more meaningfully than what they did. Everybody wants to be, one of the founding fathers. Everybody wants to be one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. Everybody wants to um, join the winning side, to participate in a group that's making some kind of change in the world that is understood to have been a good fight, to try and achieve something positive. Um, I don't know if that's ever real. You know, the joke in some thread that somebody made, some chat. Again, it was about like Soros or something, and it was just some random person um, saying, gee, I didn't want to, agree with the video. The person doing the video was, kind of saying this, like, I didn't want to agree with the negativity completely at first coming out of, this kind of anti-Semitic conspiratorial attitude about this international financier who's involved in a lot of non-governmental charity organizations and stuff, and social organizing stuff. But as I've gotten older and over time, the consequences of this kind of stuff being out there and the direction it's actually gone in and what it's actually done and what it is doing, it doesn't match up with the the label on the box, or the you know the you know spreading Christmas cheer kind of thing. Ho ho ho! What do you want Santa to bring you for Christmas? And it's just easy to kind of try and get people to go along with saying something nice. What if we could all express ourselves honestly uh, in public, and find some way of working together with all the people who share our honest feelings, to achieve something that we could not on our own. But that through our own, you know, raw and unfiltered, you know, uh, exposing ourselves, that we could achieve some collective transformation by organizing, with that. And that's what social media um, attempts to scam people into doing. I'm doing it right now because I can't really talk to human beings without getting arrested anymore. Um, Not like in a like a cool way, not like Luigi or whatever, but um, Like if I farted and somebody said it sounded like a threat, which I mean, that would be understandable if someone did that to me. I, I can see that happen. It would be neat if people could participate in groups uh, in a way that was constructive. Um, but corporations and employers and sovereign governments and all of those kinds of things seem to imply the opposite of that. If I interact with YouTube, it's to the benefit of YouTube. It's not to my benefit. And if I interact with 4chan, or if I interact with a Nintendo, it's the Nintendo that benefits from me spending part of my life with that device. And I'm still basically by myself. I basically have no more help picking up anything that's in my hands than trying to stay in shape, is going to grant me. Um, if I did need cooperation, if I did need somebody to look after me in my old age, if I did need, okay, here's the patient. It's weird. It's kind of weird. Right on the other side of that curtain. Like to socially for me to say. Um, yeah, I mean, I really think we should have anything to do in a big way. The only consequence, I think, of my existing in any public, uh, uh, like, look at that, let's get him, and I don't think more than that is going to happen to most people. Um, it really is bad how little space there is for human beings to share the world. And I was kind of taken aback. Something in the feed had like the Charlie Chaplin speech from Great Dictator, and I was like, wow, that's bullshit. That's not true at all. None of that shit you're saying is actually true. You are lying. There is not room for everybody on the good earth. Um, People kind of default to a way of being critical where, if you go outside and you're out of shape or you're old uh, or your back hurts, and people can see you, uh, that's going to draw a kind of attention to you that, you know, I mean, just combine that with poverty and it's immediately malicious. Uh, I don't know. I don't, I don't think it's as simple as, oh, I've got free speech. Really? Okay, I'll say all these things I'm not supposed to say so that you can lock me up or, whatever. I don't think it's as simple as, um, it's a trap. It's not like Elmer Fudd holding a cardboard box with a string, with a stick propping it up. Um, I think that the people who have power uh, have to genuinely, on some level, believe that they are being honest when they're not, and when they're applying the rules of a social um, um, conspiracy. Like an unspoken, uh, like we all agree to be anorexic and compete on being uh, unhealthier than each other, or we all agree to be uh, self-destructive and compete on who can afford the most wildly dangerous and recklessly fast motorcycle or race car or whatever, or we agree to you know be evil in some way that, since we're all doing it, we're not going to admit that it's wrong. We're all going to do drugs, or we're going to use drugs maliciously, and we'll agree to pretend that using drugs maliciously isn't evil or malicious. We'll pretend that you can give people drugs forcibly or, uh, without real comprehension or whatever, and it's good as long as the social uh, situation is improved, right? If there's a party and people at the party aren't enjoying the party, the people who threw the party and the people who are spending money at the party or whatever, they're not happy. They're expressing, well, we're going to leave this party, or this is a disappointment or something. And you can drug a bunch of people, and then suddenly they're expressing positivity towards the social gathering, on personal time. Um, that's what's good. To that mindset, to the mindset of, we're going to put on clothes and parade around, and then we're going to pretend that putting on clothes and parading around is significant enough that a bunch of people should pay attention to it, and that we should feel good about ourselves, and that they should feel good about that, and that everybody should spend lots of money and lots of stuff like that. Uh, and we're also going to starve all these different people, and it's going to be competitive. Um, or you're going to be like physically very unhealthy or whatever. That's an example of that kind of thing. Um, here's a thing you could say that's like the N word, or like retarded, or like faggot, or like whatever. Anorexia and eating disorders don't exist because uh, men are mean, or misogynistic, or because other people did something, to you. All of those things, all bulimia and anorexia and all of that kind of stuff, all of that, the fashion model industry, all of that, it all exists like that because women tend to be so physiologically lazy that they are more willing to hurt their own bodies to death than they are to diet and exercise in a way that would actually change their metabolic set point, because that would be uh, like a kind of exertion that is suffering and labor. And they don't give a shit about.
being healthy, if being healthy is hard work. What they care about is being attractive, and they have absolutely no desire to fundamentally connect the two concepts. Women don't want being actually healthy to be actually attractive, because then they would have to work to be healthy. So the majority mindset that allows behaviors and disorders and uh, unhealthy lifestyles to flourish is not just the corrupt industries and predatory people and abusive whatever that feeds into all of those systems of social interactions that creates fashion magazines full of those body image standards, or creates an industrial, supply line that sells that kind of stuff and has its own media and propaganda, and all of that kind of stuff. The thing that creates that is human beings who happen to be female, who are individually making an evil decision that causes themselves harm, but it also causes harm to the people they had an obligation to, because they are abandoning their their filial relationships to family, to tribe, to their village, to their nation, in order to pursue their own ambition. Um, and that ambition is to be, you know, fawned over and lusted over and envied, rather than to contribute something. Um, and none of that is even unique to the female psyche. But the eating disorders and the fashion industry and the way that sexual behaviors are trafficked and exploited uh, through crime and corruption and graft and blackmail and social engineering and all this has a lot to do with the way that the female body and mind would rather hurt itself than expend calories on, you know, uh, something like uh, uh, giving up a luxury for the sake of health. Um, and really, the problem there isn't humans. It's the way that uh, life accumulates toxicity preferentially, um, like methyl mercury in the food chain, or like heavy metals that bind to the the cells of plant roots or whatever. Um, One of the things about the lifestyle choices people make that hurt other people, that don't really have anything to do with them, is that toxicity is bioaccumulative. If I live a violent life, or I live a cruel life, just independently on my own, and then in my future there are people around me who did not know any violence or any cruelty, especially any cruelty, um, and I'm just in their environment, I give off a kind of radiation because of my own exposure to the hostility that I was exposed to, that affects them. And that isn't just to say, epigenetics or lead in drinking water or you know secondhand smoke or something like that, but it is the nature of material reality, not necessarily like water memory, um, but the past incurs some kind of cost, uh, sort of like potential energy, uh, where the sunk cost fallacy is that there's all these possibilities that were lost. Like Sylvia Plath's sort of way of describing the kind of Roko's basilisk kind of looking at the future, where she was talking about like a tree with all the branches of the different possible futures that it could grow into, and all the potential flowering of one set of choices in life, and then some kind of events that just withered all of that, and all of those branches and all that other stuff fell away, and there was only this sickly trunk left. um, that's a more corporeally, uh, again, it's like that kind of anorexic, kind of body dysmorphic kind of way of imposing, uh, sort of cosmological, um, the conceptualization of all of reality onto, in her case, a body. That I think it kind of has that resemblance to, the kind of woman that you would imagine was a suicidal woman who stuck her head in an oven. Um, she doesn't sound like a land whale. That's one way to put it. Um, but in the case that I'm referring to is anything that you actually get to articulate that is socially forbidden, taboo. And it's not that threatening to kill the president is actually against the law, in the sense of like this global, kind of like universal conceptual. We can't think about talking about thinking about talking about that. You can have a conversation where you are very clearly expressing that this is a concept that you are discussing for the sake of discussing concepts and their relations to each other, and it is not the articulation of your itinerary for next weekend. What are you doing next weekend? Well, I was going to go on the internet and talk about how the following weekend I'm planning on killing the president, of the Hair Club for Men, of which I am also unaware if they still exist. Uh, but everything is, in that sense, it's like stand-up comedy, or it's like, you're intentionally trying to manipulate the parts of the conversation that the speaker is present for, in order to, uh, sort of twist their words. I think sales over the telephone is very much like that. Like if you work for Comcast or Verizon and you have to kind of try and escalate somebody's purchase, like, oh, by the way, you were spending the last 3 hours of your life attempting to, you know, uh, to continue your existing like phone service or cable contract or internet, correct? Oh, and by the way, we have a special offer. Would you like the deluxe cravings box? Would you like would you like to try our apple pie? For just 5 cents, special promotional. And that kind of stuff keeps happening. It keeps happening. It keeps happening. Have you ever had delusions? Have you ever had delusions? Do you want to kill yourself? Do you want to harm anyone else? Are you sure you don't want to harm anyone else? What about me? Do you want to harm me yet? Hello? What if I kept asking you for the next 3 hours if you wanted to harm yourself? Then would you want or harm anyone else? Would you want to harm me? If I spent 10 hours asking you if you wanted to harm yourself or others or me, would you have anybody? What if we were trapped in a room together for eternity and I just kept asking you if you wanted to harm anyone at all? Maybe just to get them to stop asking you that. Maybe if you harm me, maybe you would escape from the prison of being asked whether or not you want to harm anyone. Uh, then would you want to harm someone? Are you sure? And and that that's a sales technique. That's a pressure tactic. Um, and it's a pressure tactic in tactic in like therapy, whatever kind of oriented culture, um, because you're just trying to push someone towards a particular lane where you either benefit from the interaction or you don't have to deal with it anymore. Um, Either somebody is a paying customer and they're talking to you because it's not that much of a problem for you to have to pretend to be there talking to them and you get paid for it. So it's like something that's entertaining for you. You have a therapy client list and you only actually keep the clients that are just easy money. And everybody else, you're just either going to try and like abusively attack them to get rid of them, or you might offer them bad advice, right? Or you might tell them that, oh, there's somebody else who can really help you with your problem, not me. Um, and being a therapist is that's the job in the beginning from the outset, because the job is talk to your actual doctor about how to fix your stupid ass. And it's just like Catholic confessional. Tell Jesus, you're sorry 50 times. Maybe he gives a shit because I don't. Um, Tell his mom, you know. And that's one way that social interaction becomes transactional, and then you're by interacting with something socially, you're paying for it, right? The same way you log into a advertising supported free online whatever that you paid for an electronic device uh, to sign on to, and you're paying a subscription for this and for that or whatever. Um, like social interaction is a public utility, right? Except there's no other person there. You can pay to say that you're able to turn the tap on and off for social interaction, but it's not actually there. It's just the illusion. In my case, it's like well, no one's going to. I'm doing a lot of things to make this unappealing. I don't I don't point the camera at something that looks right. I don't I don't intentionally point it at something that looks disgusting. But there's lots of stuff that looks disgusting, and I don't think to myself, "Oh, I better move it until it looks nice." I don't think I can do that. I don't think I can do that with my face or my stupid shitty hair, or my stupid shitty body or my stupid shitty clothes, or not even my shitty clothes. They're someone else's nice clothes. They look shitty on me. And um, so if I wanted to say I'd really like to join, the grassroots political organizing campaign of anybody from any political party and work my ass off and like uh, wash the tires on their campaign bus and bring everyone coffee holders and swizzle sticks, and not even have the authority of the guy who brings people coffee or something. But if I was sincerely articulating I want to participate in the world And people were so far gone in general that came out. Well, I know I'm not going to succeed at any of these other things. So maybe if I kill the president, half the population that didn't vote for him will be at least a little bit happy with what I did. Like this Luigi guy, uh, he murders a CEO on the street, and it does seem like for the duration of most of whatever was going on internally, within himself, um, he had a positive affiliative reason for doing that with a bunch of other people that he had not met and was trying to ingratiate himself towards. Um, now he's in the same situation that I would be in anytime I get locked up for basically nothing, for being a shitty loser. Um, he's in the same situation that you would be in if you were involuntarily committed for whatever, and people just thought you looked like a generic, uh, you know, police lineup kind of convict, like Florida Man or a trailer park, uh, you know, uh, watch list, you know, sex offender registry kind of person, and that's just a value judgment on someone's appearance. That's all that really is. And I know that's what I look like. I know I look like a, ugly, nasty piece of shit because I'm not, 6'10", and I don't have giant, you know, oiled, um, glistening, uh, you know, sun-kissed, skin. Uh, my appearance is something that's socially. Her shoes out there. I don't like those shoes. Yeah, but anyway, um, it's nice that I get to say sort of whatever I want in a negative way about how successful other people's aspirations to um, seek some white bread middle class form of social justice would be, um, like Flesh Simulator, uh, or basically everyone on 4chan, or I don't know, someone like Shoe on Head, or most of the sort of alt right or whatever. It's just cultural animosity towards a bunch of people who are doing pretty okay being assholes. Um, and that's kind of true of the left too. I don't know. Maybe I'll give up on trying to do any of this, and I'll try and set some piece of electronics up. Um, but yeah, I mean, I honestly believe that free speech is a scam, uh, and that what gives me my free speech is the lack of an audience. And I think that's generally true about most of the important things that people have said. Um, there are probably a lot of books from 300 years ago or 500 years ago that articulated a lot of the messages, that the things that we think of as important from that era, uh, spoke to. But the ones that we remember, like with pop music, are the ones that didn't challenge the the authority of the the state. You know, I don't think I'm a threat to anybody in in power or anything in power. I don't think I'm a threat to the platform. I don't think I'm a threat to the algorithm. I don't think I'm a threat to the shareholders. I think that my lack of, oh wow, did I figure out how to plug this thing in? Okay, it's got a light on it. That's awesome. Have a, but I do think that if people paid attention to me, or if systems paid attention to me, the overwhelming result of that would just be negative. I don't think I have been able to contribute anything to the world that would be valued enough to. Now, is this thing, plug this little guy in? This little guy, I think the light is, yeah. So, and the thing for now, I guess I'll just try and fix this. Still waiting for my. Okay, that's not working so great. Hmm. Yeah, but I mean, so the flesh simulator guy, he's actually saying to his people, he's this guy, he's very like all the conspiracy theory stuff, but the rational parts of it, the parts of it where, you know, no, we don't think people are concealing that they're secretly space reptiles who faked the moon landing and have a Death Star, satellite that makes the weather. But they're probably criminals. They're probably creeps. They're probably, um, you know, manipulating public opinion, um, and controlling the media narrative, like was obviously true about the era of McCarthyism and Reader's Digest and the CIA uh, post World War II involvement in communist and unaligned countries in Latin America and outside of the U.S. sphere of dominance, um, throughout the whatever, like the Dulles people. Um, so yeah, my exasperation is this the state of the sort of political movement that exists? The people who aren't doing what I'm doing, they're doing a better job of what I'm doing. Right? I'm not doing a good job of um, using social media. I'm not doing a good job of speaking out for my own politics, or I'm not doing a good job of saying something constructive to other young men or single guys or any political group or uh, you know something useful to say that would help people in the opposite sex who are trying to navigate their own relationships. I'm not saying anything interesting or useful enough to anybody because here's these other examples of it, who have like production equipment and they have coherent videos and coherent, uh, long form content and, like musical accompaniment and editing. And is this thing just not on? Well, maybe there's a website for them. Oh man, I'm just literally just standing here like a mental patient, waiting for my phone to ring, and then I gotta get on the metro to go get my car. I guess. I guess I could do that now. But people, oh yeah, yeah, well, yeah. No, I don't. I don't know if they're gonna do it today. I don't know when it got there. If it got there, I don't know. I think I texted you that I hadn't had it code. Yeah, I couldn't get it to start. Um, I guess I could try and go over there now if I called first and they said, yeah, they're gonna get to work on it because it would take them like 2.5 hours to get there on the train, right? I mean, I'm tempted to try and call my mom, but I don't want to. It's just such a fucking pain in the ass walking over or getting on the bus. I don't think I have it. I found 2 Metro cards, but I think they're probably both short of money. Um, but yeah, I guess I'll just call satellite and then walk over to the bus stop and then walk over there. They haven't called yet. Yeah. Yeah, but I think free speech comes from the lack of utility of speech. I think that the founding fathers either consciously knew and understood, or like a bunch of anorexic fashion models, they had successfully monopolized something for their own gain that was a barrier to entry, and that by advocating for a value system that mirrored their own success, they were tacitly, uh, you know, burning the bridge behind them, or burning the fields before winter or whatever. This was a way of making it impossible for people to follow the trick that they pulled, um, by basically organizing openly in a way that, if you look at modern societies like the United States and like, um, well, a lot of them, but I mean, even the Catholic Church during the Inquisition, any kind of dissenting thought was shut down as, violent, as an act of constructive hostility. Now, obviously, I don't have the resources to, harm anyone. I've never held a firearm in my hands in my life. I've never learned to. I've never, you know, trained any of those skills. I don't know anything about actually doing that. If I threatened to shoot someone, to make good on that threat, I would need a camera. Um, I don't have the skill set to do that. I don't know how to make a bomb. I don't know enough about chemistry. I don't have the means. I don't have the materials. I don't know how to acquire any of those things. And that's universally true of all of that stuff. I've lived a life where I avoided learning about things that could make me look threatening, because people treated me like I was threatening sounding or looking, just because of how I look and sound. Um, so I'm basically defenseless from my perspective, and like an open book about that. And it's pretty frigging obvious from all the parts of my life that have been openly, you know, available for scrutiny. I don't have the. If somebody was going to be harmed by me, they would have to be standing close enough for me to hit them with my little crappy anatomy, and that would have to be a threat to them. And aside from the people in my personal life, I don't think there's anybody who thinks they're going to be around me in order to, uh, have to worry about that ever, at all. You know, I one person attacked me in public, uh, as an adult that I can think of off the top of my head, and I just stood there. Why are you doing that? I didn't. It didn't even occur to me to lash out, even though it seems like it was kind of like a cosmic, uh, effort to entrap me. Um, and looking back on the experience, I was just more concerned with, uh, you know, feeling like shit about myself, because maybe it made me look like even more of a bitch, uh, than I could really, uh, feel like I was in danger. Um, my life has been humiliating. Humiliating. I come off like such a huge fucking loser. I should just fucking jump off the roof of this building, based on how disgusted I am with how pathetic my own life is. I should murder somebody in power like Luigi in order to, um, assert to others, you know what? I have an opinion too, and I'm not just some little milquetoast that you guys can all push around. That would be the objective in that therapeutic Stuart Smalley sense of me actually doing anything, but then I would be siding with the faggot therapists who encourage people to change their lives through emphatic self praise or something, right? You'd have to be dumb, like, okay, like Yukio Mishima, right? who was a homosexual and a moron, um, but also a violent, you know, reactionary nationalist or something. He was willing to do a thing, you know. But it was dumb. All of the stuff that he did when he did a thing made him look like that guy who feels sorry for himself and has to do some kind of big public flagrant flailing display to get attention so people might reevaluate the negative, like you're not very important, we don't have to worry about you because you're nobody kind of thing. um, and if I actually did have a belief that the political, like the philosophical underpinnings of the world that I live in, that I live under some kind of set of conditions that's unjust, right? And that's something that actual living individuals that I share, the planet with concurrently are actually the beneficiaries of, or they're responsible for it, or in material fact, they're in custody of the benefit of my exploitation. So they don't know they're doing something to screw me over. They don't know who I am. They don't know what they're doing that's successful, that's allowing them to make my life miserable in a way that they benefit from. I am, you know, underwater or something, and rising sea levels have led me to have to crawl through the mud, and sitting on top of my back is a huge fat person who is so fat they cannot tell that one of the reasons why they are dry and comfortable is because they're crushing a bunch of other people who are struggling to breathe in a muddy, festering, shitty swamp. Um, they don't realize that because they're elevated in stature by squishing me with their fat ass. Um, and they're just obliviously going through their life, robotically spitting out phrases and why you make noise. Okay. And none of that, is a question of some kind of intentional effort to to harm me. It's just like their uh, carbon um, emissions, right? Um, Now, if I go after them individually, or if I go after them as a group, and I know it would take a lifetime or then some of like explaining on a chalkboard how they were fucking me over and a bunch of other people and how that was bad when they were benefiting from it, and they just wouldn't, willingly listen to the idea that no, you shouldn't be doing this thing that's benefiting you. um, I don't any, it would not be macho, and it would not be successful, and it would not be smart, and it would not be just for me to do something personally, like drywall punching that would make the newspaper because I had my feelings hurt, right? That would be fake and gay, or not fake, but lame. It would be like, whiny and pathetic. If there was some way that I could successfully teach, right, uh, or instruct or inform lots and lots of other people, or just something else, how to abolish or how to interfere with this thing that I don't like, right? That would be a more rational form of hostile agency or action. If I wanted to shoot the president because I hated what America something, like I didn't like the guy personally, I didn't like the system, or I didn't like how it had dealt with me, or whatever. But my motive for doing it was to affect some kind of change in the state of affairs, besides just me getting, locked up or shot. Um, because there's a million other more enjoyable ways to get yourself locked up or shot, like drinking and driving. Um, but if I was going to do it and my motive was, I want good people to have authority and I want bad people to not have authority, and the person who has authority is bad. So my solution to that is I'm going to make sure one person stays fired that I don't think should be employed. Um, that's like this incredibly neutered and tail between your legs, like inability to even conceptualize the idea of doing something against someone in power. Is like, what can you imagine that would go against someone else in power that would work? Well, if I had a gun, since people are very fragile, right? If I harmed someone who was way up in power, so far up in power that the things that they were doing were individual to them, and that affected the entire structure of how authority worked, you know, then I could conceptualize having power myself, not I want to do this because I really actually believe aliens are talking to me, or I have another personality, and my other personality is, like a you know attractive Italian guy who can get laid by looking like a cool counterculture person, and I'm gonna set up their social media profile by becoming a political assassin. The real motive, and this is me actually diagnosing what I think is wrong with the people that I've been slandered with the diagnosis of. I don't think crazy is real. I don't think you out there, I don't think you really believe your dog is telling you to go back in time and kill Son of Sam and have sex with his dog. No, I don't think that's what your dog wants. What I think your dog is trying to tell you is that you feel like a bitch, and you feel like the only way that you can express yourself is in ludicrous, overt, nonsensical, flailing stuff that doesn't make sense. And that's what crazy is. That's what insanity is. That's what saying I have 50 personalities. And one of my personalities is uh, the reincarnation of a Mesoamerican demigod, um, with the head of a jaguar, right? And let's take that as stuff that I might be able to put back on the board in the right place. And the body of a I don't know. Anyway, the point is, it's just made up. You're just making stuff up. You're just making stuff up because what you're telling the person that's listening to you, if you're in a situation where someone's saying, "Do you think you hear voices?" You're just, yeah, I hear voices, and they think you're an asshole. You're so like uh, not necessarily introverted, but you're so beaten down by some kind of set of confrontations you've gone through in your life that you're just not willing to stand up for yourself, which is kind of the point of so much of the way that authority is conveyed in civilization. If, instead of saying, you know, uh, I'm going to do something uh, individually like antisocial and hostile, okay? You're just saying, I'm going to volunteer to participate in some form of social hostility, but I'm going to, like suggest it. Like, what if we all raised our hand if we were willing to overthrow the whatever? Let's overthrow something. Let's see how many people we can get to raise their hand, and then let's just overthrow something that has fewer people than the number of people who raise their hand. Um, depending. Like we raise our hands, and if there's like 1,000 people, and we can all put in like $10, you know, uh, then we can go like we could get a used car, I guess. I don't know how this would work, but we'll figure it out. We'll just who wants to do a thing, that's not necessarily going to be something people like, but let's just all agree we're going to want to do that. Just something. Just who's pissed off enough, just enough that if there's more of us that are pissed off than there are who won't admit they're pissed off, we'll just all, we're not necessarily mad as hell and not going to take it, but we'll see. We'll see. Anybody. And if you were willing to admit um, your own pathetic lack of control over, not necessarily to say something like, I'm surrendering myself to God and I'm just going to try and have as many kids as possible, raise as many of someone else's children as possible, praise Jesus, um, or something like that. Um, if it was more like, uh, I don't really understand what's going on, but is there some way that we could make it funny, but also someone else could get hurt more than I feel? If can we agree to take on someone else who doesn't raise their hand? Um, if there was any willingness to defect from patriotism, like as a generalization, to say, no, I don't love this country and I don't want to be here. And I think that's a stupid question, to ask somebody. Um, if there was any willingness to be confrontational with something that was obviously uh, it's not a leading question. Maybe it is begging the question. I forget if this is actually begging the question. I always look it up and it never. But um, if you were not sincere in trying to get information when you communicated with someone else, or communicate, you weren't sincere. You were trying to force people into a specific kind of answer. Mental health, the specific kind of answer is either I'm working on my mental health, or I'm there's something wrong with me, and I admit there's something wrong with me, or whatever. But basically, I'm a customer, and I'm I love working with you people and paying you money. That's the only thing that's a valid answer to a certain degree. Um, the entire model of it, what I'm saying here is it's political and it's wrong. Yes, there are people who are just so far gone that they're probably going to spend decades of their life in what, in other circumstances amounts to a like a fit, like a panic attack, like a tantrum, um, and you won't be able to convince them otherwise. As long as they exist in society with ambulances and 911. Uh, my ex-wife, she had a way of describing um, seeking out interactions. Like instead of instead of picking a movie to rent, you you click on like the random suggest an anime, on a website, and then you download that anime and you watch that, right? Um, that you have a random button, right? Uh, for handling your life. And that could mean hitchhiking. That could mean, clicking on an online dating profile and just seeing where that goes. Um, but that's a random button where you are looking for an escape route from your current situation. And no matter how many times you do it, uh, when you are in a situation you don't like and you live in a society where you can say, there's an emergency, there's an emergency, there's an emergency, and there's any kind of methodology that you can use to, um, escalate that into an event in your life, you have a way of escaping from your circumstances. The equivalent would be pulling the fire alarm when you're in school, when you're a kid in school and you're not prepared for a quiz or a test or something like that, and you want to try and evade the responsibility you had, so you don't get failed for the test or the quiz or whatever. Um, but this would be within your own personal life. You just don't want to be in your own personal life, in the circumstances, in the situation, in the room, in the you know however you find yourself. And this is this means of, even if it's temporary, escaping from that reality, escaping from that confinement in that situation. Uh, and that's absolutely true of a huge portion of the population whose engagement with mental health services is about a negative, toxic kind of cohabitation that they have, uh, usually for very, very significant period of time with relatives, with family, or something like that. And if they do get out into the world, it's not in circumstances where they can sustain any kind of independent functioning life. Um, they don't have, you know, a kitchen and a bathroom and a washroom and whatever set up in such a way that they can take care of themselves in private on their own without any kind of intervention. And basically, nobody can do that in the world that we live in. If you need to make an international flight once in your life in order to get through it, you did not get through life on your own. If you need to be put under anesthesia for surgery, You did not get through life on your own, you know. Um, if your job, you know, took care of your withholding for your taxes or your insurance premiums, you didn't get through life on your own. Um, and that's the state of affairs that we all experience. Um, and it is oppressive. It is massively oppressive. And the